we went to film school or you study at uni, 3-point lighting, that beauty lighting is what you were taught. You got your key light, then you got your fill light, and then you got a backlight. And that's kind of what's kind of translated across into your corporate world. It's kind of what's going to set you up to do those jobs. And it is a style that I think a lot of workplaces do go for. I don't shoot that way a lot of the time.
Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by Emel, and today we're going to be talking about lighting. Emel, tell me about lighting.
Well, I think lighting is probably one of the most underrated, important things if you're going to be a director of photography or a cinematographer. I think they go in hand. So everyone's looking for the next best camera. But I think when you come back to the core of things, a director of photography not only can shoot well, but they can also light things well. And they understand the relationship between light and shadow to create the perfect image.
Awesome. Well, tell me about that relationship.
So I think when you're going out to shoot, I think most cinematographers or DOPs are looking to make sure that everything has shape. And to do that, they'll usually either light things or they'll use natural light. I like to use a combination of the two when I shoot every day, but it also really is project dependent.
Yeah, so let's just say you're going to go shoot someone in a football field or at a football oval, and you're thinking in your head, it's a nice sunny day, it's going to look really nice. You get there and it's overcast, there's no light to shape or anything like that, it's all soft. What do you do?
Well, I think
after you pick yourself up off the ground crying.
I think sometimes it can be a bit of a blessing having an overcast day.
Yeah, because then you get the soft lighting, and soft lighting is flattering. And sometimes those hard, sunny days, harsh lighting, it's not what the client wants when having harsh shadows across the head. And if you don't have any lighting modifiers like reflectors or scrims or anything like that, you're in for a bit of trouble. Yeah,
and they can often be hard, like navigating the sun as it's moving throughout the day. If you have an overcast day, then you at least know it's going to be consistent. So it can be a little bit easier to work with. On an overcast day, you're pretty much going to be okay no matter what way you shoot. But if I had planned it and I had lights on me on the overcast day, then like adding a little bit of a backlight or something just to kind of make it pop, I think would be really cool.
Yeah, what kind of light would you use outside to do that?
On an overcast day, I would probably try and take out like a battery-operated light, depending if I had the power supplies on me or not. I did actually do a shoot recently that I had to take out a battery for because there were no power points anywhere.
Yeah, you can plug it into the tree.
Yeah, exactly. But I was running a Aperture 600D off that, so that was pretty good for a couple of hours. That was a sunny day though. Didn't do a whole lot because it was very sunny, but it was all we had at the time. If I was outside on a overcast day, like something like a 60X or something would do just fine. Just for a little bit of a rim light or a hair light, just to have a little bit of separation from the background is probably what I would go for.
Yeah, and do you use reflectors much?
Not a whole lot. On an overcast day, you probably wouldn't get that much out of it anyway. But something I have been meaning to actually do more of is take out a neg fill on days when I'm shooting outside.
And what does a neg fill do?
So a neg fill just kind of stops light reflecting onto someone's face so you can get that shape that you would like. So if you were doing an interview or a piece to camera or something, or you were shooting a film and you had the neg fill on one side, it would just help stop any light being reflected or landing on someone's face, so you get more shadow on one side and you would get a little bit more shape that way and more cinematic.
Yeah, and do you find that that's more of a personal preference? I hear some creators online talking about bringing in the negative fill to make the image look more cinematic and shape and all that kind of stuff. But for a lot of the corporate stuff that I do, soft lighting, flat lighting is flattering. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. Yeah, like when we went to film school or you study at uni, 3-point lighting, that beauty lighting is what you were taught. You got your key light, then you got your fill light, and then you got a backlight. And that's kind of what's kind of translated across into your corporate world. It's kind of what's going to set you up to do those jobs. And it is a style that I think a lot of workplaces do go for. I don't shoot that way a lot of the time, and I think people are pretty happy with it. If a client does want that more of a, studio light, they want that light, that shadow to be filled out, I will do it. And yeah, it's totally project dependent as well, because I'm doing a lot of emotional pieces that are, telling someone's story, and we're trying to make the audience feel something. The light that I choose to go with kind of reflects that language as well.
Yeah. And what kind of support do you have with these lights? Do you just have cheap Amazon stands, or are you lugging big C stands, combo stands? What are you doing?
Yeah, I would love to be able to lug the C stands everywhere, but I've got I drive a Kia Sportage, so there's not a whole lot of space in there. And also, I'm not working on shoots where I've got like a crew of 10 people. Like, it's just me and maybe a producer sometimes. So
the producer is lugging the C stand along for you.
Yeah, with me. Like, we all try to help each other out at the Just Picture Company. I'll usually work with like Chelsea. She's a producer, and so like we want to be pack light. So I've got, I think, a couple of like the Manfrotto stands. They're multiple different sizes. I've got the small ones, got the big ones. I do have C stands that I use occasionally. If I'm using a light like a 600D, I will use a C stand just because it needs support. It's a much bigger light.
And do you find you have to bring sandbags or shot bags or whatever you want to call them as well, just to make sure that the stands are not going to get knocked over when you're outside?
Yeah, I think you have to think about safety when you're on shoots, especially if there's people walking around that have nothing to do with the production. You want to make sure that, people are safe on set.
Yeah. And do you find like having those extra shot bags like a real annoyance to have to keep lugging around? Or do you have a great solution like a cart or something like that that is able to help you move all this heavy gear around?
Oh, yeah, I do. I do hate taking sandbags everywhere. They're so annoying. They're so heavy, and that's why we got to go to the gym and keep it fit. But like, I do have a cart. I have a rock and roller that I use, and that's pretty good. It extends so I can put all of my, my Pelican cases and my lighting bags on there, and then pile of sandbags on top. Just the weight stops it from toppling over anyway, so it's a win-win. And I just push that into the shoot. Hopefully there's a lift if I'm working in a building.
I was going to say, it's always great until you get pointed to the stairs and you're like,
yeah, it has happened before.
Yes.
I did a shoot with the team. We shot for Centre. I think it was Chris Hemsworth's workout brand. One of the shoot locations we shot at was literally up 2 flights of stairs, and we carried everything up, like all of the lights, all of the we had C stands, sandbags, boxes of cables. It was
your gym workout for the day.
There was no lift.
Yeah.
They needed a lift.
Yeah, it's always heartbreaking when you get pointed to the stairs, and
you're exhausted before the shoot begins.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about lighting outside. Let's go inside now. What kind of setups are your go-to for lighting?
In my kit, when I shoot, I usually have just a key light and a backlight. Usually I only just have the two, just to kind of keep the setups quick, so I can move on pretty quickly, because the clients often really want you to finish the job, and so that their employees can move on with their day.
On to the next thing.
Yeah, on to the next thing. So I usually shoot with an aperture 300D, and then the backlight is usually an aperture 60X, which is bicolor as well. So I can kind of go between the two, like tungsten and daylight, just depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes I'll do a little tungsten backlight, a little hair light, just some little pop of orange. It's quite nice. If I do need a fill, then sometimes I use a reflector inside, or like a poly or something. We've got some reflective poly that we kind of put up. But yeah, that's something I'm doing a little bit more of. I'm trying to fill a little bit more sometimes.
And what kind of lighting modifiers do you have?
We've just got softboxes at this stage. We also have big diffusers that we can kind of punch lights through, but they're too big for use inside. Egg crates, we've also got cutters and egg fills, using those a little bit more. Sometimes I don't bring those on shoots all the time. So if I'm in a room and there is a window with curtains, sometimes I'll use the curtain to cut light off the back wall, just to create that difference in exposure between the talent and the background. So just things like that you can do with the room and what's already there. You can kind of help your shot along that way. I've also used a whiteboard as a reflector. on a shoot. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a little bit of fill. It was just really dark, that room. And I was like, there's a whiteboard over here. I just brought it over.
Did the job. You were very resourceful.
Yes, you got to be creative sometimes.
You do, yeah. And also, you've got a 300D, so that's daylight color temperature. Do you ever think, oh, gee, I'm in this fluorescently lit room. I really wish I had a 300X to be able to change the color temperature? Or when you walk into a room, is it lights off and then your lights on?
I think it's definitely the latter. Like most of the time I'm like, if I can, I will turn the lights off. And even if I'm in a big building in the city, like those lights are all connected sometimes. So like,
so how do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, well, I've actually convinced some offices to turn off the lights. So half the office just goes out
And they
just
deal
so
with
I
it.
can film. But most of the time they can't. So yeah, you just kind of have to deal with it. Like I think sometimes there's enough light in the room coming from the windows that you have enough daylight to kind of overpower the fluorescent lights that are in the room. I've definitely used a neg fill before to kind of cut the light off the top of someone's head, so it kind of, you avoid the raccoon eyes and, you know, the mixing of the colors and the tints. But I've also, if you can't, like I've also just trying to be tactical about where I place the talent in the room, just so they're not directly under a light. That kind of helps as well.
Yeah, I've had that quite a few times. You got the drop down lights and then you get the raccoon eyes. And I do find sometimes I need to, like, I'll have the shot set up and then the talent walks in. I'm like, oh dear, I forgot about that light. And then, oh, can you just move that way? Oh, come a little bit closer. Let me just move the tripod now. And a bit of a dance and all that. But yeah, sometimes you go into these places and you just can't turn the lights off. And the light that you have just isn't going to be enough to make it look as flattering as possible. So not all lights live on stands. There are other lights that can be magnetic and go onto C-stands and other things like that. What other types of lights have you used that don't stay on a stand?
A couple of times I have used a magic arm just to kind of rig a light into the, like a beam or something, or a pipe that's hanging off the roof, just for a backlight. Because sometimes you're working in spaces that are so small that you want a backlight, but you don't have space in the shot to kind of get it there. So a magic arm with a couple of clamps on there really does the job.
Yeah. So in this studio right now, I've got a few different RGB lights. The light behind you is a tube, and I'm able to change that with the app on my phone here, which is currently actually running the audio recorder. And they are really helpful. I like being able to add just a splash of color in the background and have the control. Is that something that you use on your projects?
Yeah, I actually really love the way that you use these. It's something that I've done a couple of times too. I haven't done it in a little while. I think when we first we have a couple of nanlite tubes and the smaller nang lights. Got into a massive phase using those when we first got them. I was so excited by the RGB colors. You know, Euphoria came out. Everyone was using colors and everything. So any chance I got to do a music video or something minorly creative, like an interview that was talking about music or something, I would put one in the background. It's really fun, but I think I kind of moved away from it very quickly. But I think it is very cool. It is cool to use, just that little splash of color in the background. Or if you wanted to highlight something in the background that, you know, adds a little bit of a pop, or you don't even have to use it in RGB. You could use it in, you know, tungsten or daylight. But
it's very versatile.
Yeah. I think they've got different settings as well, like police effects and storm effects.
I used that the other day. Yeah. They've got all these effects. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to use them. And then I actually used that police effect the other day. I was doing a product shot for a video where I had a transformed Optimus Prime. I wanted it to look cinematic and cool. So I had on this very table, Optimus Prime set up, and then I had a smoke machine blowing some smoke, and then I had two Aperture MCs behind it flashing the red and blue. So the effects get used very rarely, but yeah, they are there.
Yeah, it's good to have though, because I was in a similar situation to you where I was on a shoot and I was like, oh, we were in a cinema and we wanted to make it look like they were watching something. So they had this, we had the nanlights there with that TV effect on, and so it just flashed up a little bit of light on their face. But we had stands for them too, so they were kind of doing it to their whole body, which it wouldn't happen in real life. You want to kind of cut it off so it's just hitting their face.
Yeah.
So we taped up the bottom of the light with some gaff, so just a little bit of light was coming in on their face, and that was really cool. It was very effective.
Yeah, I find with lighting, a lot of the time it's the little things. Like you go to so much work just to get that little thing to make it just a little bit better. I've watched so many YouTube videos where they're doing a lighting breakdown and they're talking about the light that they're just shooting onto the background just to give it a pop of light. And they're like, so I'm just going to grab my 600C. And I'm like, whoa, 600C? Like that's multiple thousands of dollars in Australian money just for a background light. Is that something that you've found in your projects, that you're going to so much work to just get that little thing and it costs so much for that little piece of equipment?
I think it can. I think it can definitely cost that much, but it doesn't have to. You can be resourceful about the way that you do things. Like if you wanted to get like a particular shadow or like cast a little bit of texture onto your background, you could just pick a branch off the ground and put it in the window and then rig it with a C-stand, and then you'll get the kind of, that tree atmosphere in the background with the shadows. It's little things like that I think really add towards the total feel of your shot.
Yeah, so I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on a spotlight with a custom done gobo or whatever just to get that little.
I mean, it's nice to have, but like
if you got it, that's great.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just go to the garden and then just get a twig or whatever.
Yeah, totally. It's not always going to work that way, but it's good to have, but not necessary.
Yeah, it's nice when it works out. You mentioned as well when you're able to be creative with music videos. Talk me through one of your music video projects. You've recently done one where you had to get up at ridiculous o'clock to get a sunrise.
That's probably one of the other things I really like to consider with shoots, is making sure that you're intentional with the time of day that you're shooting. Because if you think about it, like even with the lights in the rooms that we shoot for corporates, they're top down. In the middle of the day, the light is top down. You're getting the similar shadows. But in the morning and the evening, that light's kind of a bit more side on. You're getting more shape. The light's more flattering. You're getting certain colors. It could be warmer. So I try to shoot at the top and tail of the day where possible. But as you know, not everyone's always keen to get up super early. So I had a music video where I really wanted to shoot early in the morning at the beach. And so I got the entire team to get up at 3 a.m. to make it there, and we got there super early and we set up all of the shot, all of the equipment, and gotten the shot ready, and we're just waiting, ready to go for that perfect time of day. And as soon as the sun came up, it was beautiful, but it was very overcast. So it doesn't always go to plan. But I've also had shoots where it does go to plan, and I've gotten up super early for other shoots and, the light was perfect. So it really does change the shot. If I'd shot there in the middle of the day, it would look nowhere near as nice. But it's give and take. If you want the shot, sometimes you just got to get up a little bit early.
Yeah, and then you got to convince your crew to be on board as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to finish off today's episode, Emel, do you have any lighting tips that you want to give to our audience that we haven't covered already?
I think the lighting tip that I'd probably give to people is less is more. If you're using daylight, you don't need all the fancy equipment sometimes. You can just use light strategically, like the one coming from the sky. If you're shooting inside and there's a window and you want to shoot an interview, you don't need a light. Sometimes you can just sit somewhere near the window and use that as your key light. Or if you're shooting outside, you can use the sun as your backlight. You can use time of day to make your shots look nice. You don't always need all of the gear to make it a beautiful shot.
Great tip. Well, Mel, thank you very much for joining us on the Your Story Studios podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.